Sponsor alert.
I repeat, sponsor alert, incoming game.
The world ends in 7 moons.
Well, hey everybody, how are y'all doing today? My name is Deficiency Productions with a Z, and today I'd like to tell you about my current dark fantasy Souls-like JRPG project amalgam thing.
Throne.
You can check it out over at my deficiencyproductions.itch.io, and you can follow me on Twitter at DeficiencyP.
Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to RPG Maker Cola.
Hey RPG Maker Cola listeners, welcome to RPG Maker Cola Season 2. It's your fizzy, soda-filled source of content for game development opinions that mean very little in the grand scheme of things, and you better believe it's your favorite RPG Maker podcast, RPG Maker Cola. I'm your host Benny, also known as Cash, also known as the Puzzle Snob, also known as the Moongoer, the Liberated Avian, the Final Ultimate Lexical Node, the Placebo of Hatred, and this is the place for you. It's a chill space where we get together skilled developers from the RPG Maker community to chat cordially and occasionally non-cordially about game development, game design, and probably a whole bunch of unrelated other stuff too. It's casual, it's cool, it's cola. Today I have 2 guests who I am very privileged to introduce. To say that they've made a beneficial effect on the RPG Maker community as a whole is an understatement. I've known of these two guests' games for a long time, a very long time. They've been 2 of my, game development role models in the sense I've been playing their stuff since early in my own game development journey, and they've influenced a lot of how I perceive RPG Maker and how I attack the game development process. And I don't think that's an overstatement. I think it's quite a popular phenomenon. Here's what I'll say about our first guest. I think before 2011, you wouldn't be remiss to think that RPG Maker as an engine didn't have any viability to create games that sold. It was sort of relegated to the back as a kind of niche engine that was easy to pick up and use, but didn't necessarily pack the power to create something that resonated with audiences. Early on, I'd already played RPG Maker classics like the one that introduced to me A Blurred Line by Lysander86 and The Way, games released in the 2000s. But those were freeware games, and while they were passion projects that charmed and they resonated, they didn't break through to the commercial gaming sphere.
There were exceptions, such as Amaranth Games releasing the Avion series, one of the first developers to popularize RPG Maker as a commercial tool in 2006.
And then along came To the Moon in 2011, a game about 2 doctors traversing through the memories of a dying man to fulfill his last wish of going to the moon. This resonated with audiences incredibly, with its touching story, affecting characters and themes, dreamlike atmosphere that didn't seem like it was constrained within this engine that was supposed to just make Final Fantasy clones. And I don't think the RPG Maker development sphere would have been what it is today without that game. But even though it seemed to have come out of nowhere, this developer had been making games behind the scenes for quite a while, since 2006 with the narratively driven Quintessence The Blighted Venom, then surreal short stories Mirrored Light in 2008, and the Christmas story Do You Remember My Lullaby 2009, the games that seemed to tinker on the developer's sensibilities for dreamlike surreal atmosphere, cinematic cutscenes with a precision on timing and momentum, in a way that RPG Maker was just coming into fruition with. Then after establishing Freebird Games, expanding operations, we see Finding Paradise, a second episode in the same canon as their first, following 2 doctors as they attempt to untie a paradox within a lifetime's worth of memories. We have A Bird Story, a simple narrative taking place between the mix of a boy's memories, dream and imagination, and then finally a bit of a tone shift with the upcoming Imposter Factory, which is apparently a sort of bonkers time loop tragicomedy murder mystery thriller, featuring multiple casualties and a suspicious cat. I am very privileged to have on board the podcast the, head honcho at Freebird Games, the one, the only, Kan Gao.
Hi, thank you for the overly kind introduction. Actually, so my name's Kan. I don't have as many aliases. I'm also known as Khan and the Mother of Dragons, but I'm the director and composer at Freebird Games. And thank you for having me here.
Excellent, thank you so much. Our second guest is also just as awesome, but in a way that resonates with me differently in particular. Much like Kan, the majority of games made by this developer happen to be in the RPG Maker engine known as RPG Maker XP, but they don't really follow the traditional rules of the engine usually. In fact, you might find that this developer's games look even less like Final Fantasy, often concerned with the power of conversation, words, relationships, and quantifying said concepts with numbered stats. This person's games are absolutely incredible, experimental, starting with, and I'm going to pronounce this really badly, Fleuret Blanc, an RPG Maker XP game created in 2012, primarily concerned with the importance of objects in our life. The main character, Florentine, is accepted into a private fencing group where members wager the object they care about more than any other, named their prized possession. The developer seems to use a lot of awesome user interface quirks, such as in their prize-winning game Last Word, which placed highly in the Indie Game Maker Contest 2014. And this is where I first met them. I was thoroughly impressed at the humor present, the structure of the game, how it utilized a single room, and just how it visualized the struggle of conversation, subtlety, overtness, power, tact, and composure, all kind of bundled up in a sort of board game-like contest for winning and losing. There were more exquisite games, the esoteric puzzle game Social Caterpillar, the divergence into Construct 2 with the game Econ, a tile-placing minimalist abstract board game based on rules invented in 2003. And then, operating under the name 12 Tiles Games, they created a tabletop game named Lure, available now, buy it now, a card game where rival naturalists aspire to gain official recognition from the Queen. I just see that this developer is an innovative, forward-thinking game developer who has an upcoming game called Placebo Love, a sort of forward-thinking life sim, I guess, of sorts. I'm not too sure, I haven't played it. It's yet to be released, where you apparently struggle to maintain friendships and schedule different events. Sort of reminds me a bit of Persona, but we'll see how it actually turns out. I've been following this developer for a while now, and I'm proud to announce the one, the only, Merlandese.
Wow, that was really flattering. That's nice. Hey, glad to be here. I'm Merlandese. My real name's Lanny, or you can call me Lan, or sometimes cousin of dragons. Not as good as the mother of dragons, but it's nice. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure to have both of you on. So yeah, now that we're well acquainted with these developers, it's the Buzz Corner. Welcome to the Buzz Corner, the place where we talk about what RPG Maker games are gaining buzz at the moment. I've asked each of our guests to bring an RPG Maker game, talk about that they're pretty interested in. They don't have to have played it, it just has to have a game page or something that looks interesting to them. I'm going to bring a game called Two Strangers Sat in a Garden. Now, this is a game by Fleuret, and anyone who has seen this game, screenshots for this game, you may think it's like some sort of surreal fever dream. Like there's watermelons, cacti, zombies, pool tables in weird places, tanks shooting massive explosions, and a sort of nonsensical kind of fever dream aspect to the conversation. It's just it's ridiculous, funny, and there's just talks of all sorts of, it's even quite philosophically deep, I found as well. There were things about gender roles and just all sorts of, it's a mishmash of way too much stuff that my ADD brain kind of just went to town on. I just love this game. There's a series of 4 games, and I don't know. I don't think it will be created under a commercial banner, because this is almost not a streamable game. It's got some not safe for work stuff on it, but it's crazy. I recommend this game for those who can stomach it, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Kan, what have you got to bring today?
This is kind of dated, but the game I really wanted to bring was Sunset Over Yimdal, and that was a game made back in I think 2005 apparently. It felt earlier, but it was one of the first RPG Maker games, and I think this was RPG Maker 2000 that it was made in. That made me feel like that the author really had a sense of vision for what they wanted to bring, and it didn't really compromise on what they thought it had to be, but rather what they wanted it to be. And it was made with, even though it had a lot of spirited. It had a lot of resources from a lot of different sources, but it just was able to bring everything together in such a coherent manner that it really made the world feel alive. And it was also one of the first games I played that had like a hand-drawn graphics for the world. So it's kind of like it's a game that took place in pretty much in one single city, but because it had time travel element in it, in that it was a city under siege, that you got to visit the city in its many different stages of time, and see just how everything kind of led to one another. It was just such an immersive experience that it really opened up my eyes to what RPG Maker can bring in terms of just bring you into this other world that it created.
Yeah, because there's sort of this kind of aspect of a hand-drawn town with like different perspectives. It's not really the traditional, I don't know what you call it, like the not bird's eye view, the kind of 2.5D kind of.
Yeah. It's
got like different isometric stuff to it, and it doesn't really move on a grid, does it? It's like, and they're all the backgrounds are sort of like drawn. Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, that's right. It's quite freestyle in some way. I think it had a lot of sort of isometric style, especially for the interior. But yeah, the overworld map, it was quite. It just felt like a hand painted freestyle where whichever they felt like was the best way to depict this particular scene.
It's sort of apparently pretty short as well. It's not a super long game. Like it's like. Is it like a short story kind of thing?
Yeah,
is it quite cinematic?
It was quite short. Like, and it never felt like it dragged on for too long, except maybe for a couple of the mini games that was more like a mechanic thing due to the limitation of the engine. But yeah. It definitely felt like they had something they wanted to tell, and they just told it without dragging it on needlessly.
This is a sort of RPG Maker classic from 2005. I've known about this game for a while, but I haven't yet played it, but I think I really need to because it just looks stunning, like visually. I think it's pretty unique looking. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Merlandese, what do you have to bring today to the Buzz Corner?
It's a little game called Sunset Over Amdal. It's, I'm also not doing something super new, but I like to talk about Team Dragonfly. Everyone who knows anything about RPG Maker knows Team Dragonfly. They have a million games, and they all look great. I think when I first started playing like anything RPG Maker online, I think one of the first ones I played was Castle Chase, which I really loved because it didn't have the RPG Maker battle system in it, which so many other games did, But, of all the ones I could talk about, I think I want to put a little spotlight on their kind of Halloween series, I suppose you could call it. There's Halloween Flop and then later Halloween Bash. So they're both like short, tight, I think they were Game Jam games, short, tight little narratives. I think one of them stars like a young ghost. She just died. Which sounds kind of depressing, but it's actually like a really zany game. And it just kind of goes through like little vignettes of different rooms, essentially, with different monsters, different sort of cameos and references. And you fight. You do have a battle system, which, unlike the normal default battle system, kind of like plays with different rules a little bit. In like a perfect balance, it almost feels like a puzzle. The games are kind of like tight and small in that, like, when you get to the end, you've probably done everything the game has to offer, but it all clicks into place like really smoothly. Like both of them. I think Halloween Bash is better in every way at being the sequel, I think, or maybe it's the prequel. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've actually played them. But I remember the systems and the story and the graphics, like for being a jam game, it all fit together so like perfectly. It's just like a nice little battle puzzle humor game. I think they're both pretty stand out in terms of RPG Maker games. And especially if you're trying to get people to play some, Team Dragonfly games or some like lesser known RPG Maker games that don't take, 5 hours to go through. Just maybe hour with each of these games, and you're good.
Yeah, and it's got that like monochrome aesthetic. I don't know if it's quite the technical term for it for both of them. And if you've played any Dragonfly games, the humor is just on point. I think they really love to zero down on these memorable characters, and they have these portraits and these expressions that they give. That like it's quite expressive game for how few pixels it has.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too because like a lot of the Dragonfly games, you really notice the aesthetic. I believe is it Makio Kuta who does the art, I think, for almost all of them, and probably still in the Halloween games. But these ones, like you said, they're kind of chunky little, almost Game Boy games with monochromatic color tone. And she still has her art in there, but they're not like the big, like lavish portraits like April Was a Fool or Diamond Idol or any of those. But it's just like still like charming, just like they're all charming.
Yeah, and it was quite unique too. You can kind of just recognize it within a second, whenever you see one of the projects on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time.
Yeah, their portraits are definitely recognizable. They've got a recognizable art style. I actually commissioned Maki to create my avatar for my Twitter account for a while, which was really useful. So if you want to commission some kind of portrait, go check out Makio's Twitter page and just check it out.
Yeah, she also, I commissioned her to do a couple of last word characters a long time ago. She did Witty Gossip and Seymour Seymour, and adorable. And maybe I'll post them today on Twitter. You'll see them.
Oh, really? That's funny because I would have sworn they were all created by the same artist, but it just shows how seamlessly it sort of integrates with the rest of the game.
No, she did just extra commissions just for my personal enjoyment.
Oh, right.
I had my own artist on last word. Just for my little collection. I'm just like harvesting little commissions of Witty Gossip. No worry, don't think about it too much.
Yeah. No, it's quite a satisfying feeling. Yeah, and they have their roots in the visual novel genre anyway, so you can be sure that the story that is present in the game, not just the from my recollection, I played Flop only, I didn't play Bash, but the gameplay was decent, but I think the main appeal was in the characters and the story and the faces and the humor that brought along with it for me. That's what really delivered it.
And they do a lot with details. I don't think they shy away from adding small details. And you definitely feel it. I think little tiny bits of like art or little tiny bits of dialogue, or just tiny little details, and it's nice.
Yeah, it was very. I mean, they had the custom graphics to basically try to convey what everything they wanted to do with it, and it's. I think it's especially back then. I remember when with Ethereal Dreams and everything, they had was one of the few projects out on the forums that basically had almost pretty much 100% custom graphics, which was super impressive.
It wasn't as common back then, I think, to have completely custom games of that
caliber. Not at all.
Well, we are going to move on to our next segment. We've been playing games. Maybe? Hey, have you been playing games? If not, that's all cool. If so, you can listen here as each of us talk about one generic game we've been currently playing or have played and explain what we like and dislike about it. I'm going to bring, this game floored me. I'm just going to say it out front. This game absolutely floored me. It's yet to stand the test of time to see if it's one of my favorite games of like all time, but I feel like it might be in that caliber. The game's called Outer Wilds. This game, I don't even know how to begin describing it. You are a alien of sorts who starts on a home planet and then quickly kind of learns how to commandeer a ship that you can kind of zoom off into a sort of Super Mario Galaxy style galaxy of planets where everything is happening in real time. And there are minor spoilers. I'm kind of trying to skirt around them, but basically there's a mystery that you have to solve within a selected time allotment, that things happen in a specific time zone. If you've played Majora's Mask, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just the detail is astounding, and it's not like the generic kind of direction of games where they give you a quest. They put the quest marker in a particular position. You just have to walk to that position that they've told you about beforehand, get rid of the obstacles in between, and that's it. But this game, it doesn't tell you exactly where things should be. It lets you explore and get lost and get frustrated and and sort of make your way through a mystery game. And it's probably one of the finest mystery games I've played. It gets to the root of actually giving you the power to discover the solution to a mystery on your terms. And that, I don't think I've really played a game like it, honestly. It's just, it's such a ambitious indie project. It's sort of like halfway between indie and AAA. And I was floored by it. I'd encourage anybody to play Outer Wilds. Yeah, it's exceptional.
Yeah, is it only first person? I remember seeing it. Can you switch to third person in that one?
I think
like perspective.
I think it's all first person. Yeah, it's all first person.
Yeah, because you hit the nail on the head with like intriguing me about it, and I've heard people talk the same. I just can't play like first person games because I'm one of those weird people that get nauseous. But like every time, like just hearing you talk about it again, I'm like, man, I want to play that game.
I'm really sorry about this game, because this game, I'll give a warning, is that anyone who does get nauseous in first-person games, even a little bit, will get extremely nauseous by this game. This game utilizes vertigo and gravity and sort of it's almost like a horror game. The way it kind of immerses you in a space experience, sort of like that film Gravity, I guess. Where you're just you can get in situations where you are lost in space and you can't seem to get a control of your own personal momentum, and you just crash into something and die. It's like, it's a sort of it's horrifying, but I like it.
Speaking of that ambience, I think like Lenny, you can actually experience a lot of good things about it just from the soundtrack too, because it had such a great one. Like it was such a wide range for a soundtrack. I did actually. Yeah, like it starts off with like this banjo, just like a little banjo tune, but it goes all the way to the horror like ambience, and then to like just wall of synths that really represents the whole range of journey that you kind of go through with it. So it's quite fascinating.
Oh yeah, this game does a lot of experimental stuff, like especially with the music. The way that it uses music as cues for certain events that happen in the game is quite experimental. And I kind of feel bad tantalizing Merlandese as to the prospects of this game when they'll probably never be able to play it. But yeah, I'm sorry. But it's
I played Obra Dinn. Have you played that one?
Oh yes, that's another game that I'll just go on and on about. That game is exceptional.
Yeah, same here. But lucky for me on that game that you can kind of stop and take your time. Is the only way I was able to make it through it is because it's first person also, but there's like absolutely no urgency in the game at all.
Yeah.
So I can just kind of stop and look at everything like a picture instead of like, I don't know, wheeling off into space and meeting George Clooney. I don't need that.
Well,
it does sound like a great game.
I had no idea that was first person. I've seen screenshots about it. I know I should be playing it, but I haven't yet. I thought it was just like almost like visual novel-ish, looking at the screenshots. It's such a unique visual style.
Yeah, it's super unique. You should definitely try it out.
Yeah, and I'm
now we're moving on to like other games we're gonna like recommend each other.
Yeah,
we'll be here all night.
It's fine. I'm also sorry to say that Outer Wilds is as close an experience to Obra Dinn as I've experienced in a game. So it's quite similar in the way that you non-linearly have to kind of use clues, and you're not kind of led along by a string kind of thing. It kind of, if you get it, then you'll progress, but if you don't understand it, then there's probably no way for you to progress. There's different kind of routes you can go down, but once you've exhausted all those routes, and they have useful kind of user interface clues to lead you into the next place that you need to go to, but in general, it doesn't really hold you by the hand. It lets you just loose and find out your own conclusions.
Yeah, it's exceptional. Yeah, anyway, enough about of me teasing Merlandese with this game that they can never play. I would like to ask Kan, what game would you like to bring that you have been playing lately or you've played that you like to bring to light?
So I'd like to bring a game that, just to be a sadist, that one probably a lot of the audience can't really play either because it's not in English, and I don't think it ever will be, unfortunately. But it was a childhood RPG I grew up with. It was a Chinese RPG, so it wasn't localized. It was called Town, or I think in the local language, like a direct translation would be cat, dog, which as the name what have you guessed, it's about cats and dogs for the most part, and also a lot of other animals. It's this RPG about this kid who can talk to animals in general. So he kind of helps. It goes through. There's this town where the cats and dogs are having a war. And then, it progressively ramps up the scale, and the mobs get involved, and there's some volcano gets involved. It's quite a ride, and it had both kind of a nice intensity to it, and also just kind of the adorable possibilities as you can imagine from all the animals in the game having dialogues, but not like they're special talking animals, but just like they're regular animals you can just hear their thoughts. So it was quite a nice package of an RPG as a whole as well, and it was my first exposure to crafting system. Except it's not as grandiose as most RPGs, where it's for this one you would just go into, say, a washroom and you find a toilet paper and find an umbrella, and you will make some unique equipment with the umbrella and toilet paper together. And in some weird logic sense, it always made sense. So yeah, that was it's called Town. So I hope it will be translated one day, but even if not, I think it's worth checking into just for the screenshots and the general feeling of the atmosphere it gives. It's quite unique. I think it's own way.
Yeah, definitely the screenshots and the kind of pre-rendered nature of the twisted, cartoonish backgrounds. I see one with like a sort of Transylvania-esque castle in the distance. There's like everything is like an arch, like the buildings are sort of kind of twisted, and there's no real straight edges to anything, and it all made of like some twisting stone and everything. I don't know, it's such a unique art style, created in 1998, I believe, released on DOS.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like to play?
Every time I've looked it up, I've always been interested in the colors. Like there's something about the colors that's just like kind of soothing but popping at the same time. I wish I could play it too. It's just like really nice looking.
Yeah, I think it's one of the interesting examples too, where the limitations back then actually kind of helped create unique styles in terms of the color and just the general general aesthetic to it.
It sort of reminds me of a lost art style of the sort of akin to Abe's Odyssey, kind of, or Tomba 2 or something, where it's like, it's just this distinct sort of vibes of the twistedness and the rounded edges and all this kind of, that gives a little bit of uncanny valley feeling, but also, it's just kind of, it makes me want to go back to the 90s a little bit, but how does it play? Is it quite is it fun, sort of, it's like a traditional RPG experience with exploration and sorts?
Pretty much. Although the maps are, as you could see, it's kind of like, I wouldn't say Castlevania, but it's mostly horizontally scrolled. But within that horizontal, you can still go up and down. So it's like very long rectangular maps. And the battles are, I think it's like an active time battle system.
Is there any way that people can still play this today? Or is it kind of lost to time?
Emulator, I think. It still works on an emulator. But like they had a mobile version for it a while back that worked really well, but then they didn't support it because I think not enough people bought it it's kind of sad. Is this quite an enjoyable game for you? Is it more like a nostalgic trip, or? I think it's quite enjoyable in general. I think it was rated pretty high back then as well. But it's just, I think it was one of those things where like they tried to make sequels out of it many years later, and it didn't work out quite well. So it kind of the series kind of just died off.
That profound story, it was finished in the first one.
Yeah, they were all the cats were and all the dogs got along, and that was that. End of story.
Yeah. Where do you go from there? I mean, the story just finished itself.
Nobody knows. There's no way to know.
We'll move on to Merlandese. Have you been playing games? Maybe.
It's such a funny. It's like you answered the question for me. Yeah, maybe. No. So I'm going to bring up my current favorite little obsession is Yuppie Psycho, an indie game made by Baroque Decay. Great company, great people. They specialize in sort of like horror adventure games. It's really interesting because like I could easily see Yuppie Psycho being a game that was originally made on like RPG Maker or something. I don't think it was. I don't know what it was. It's a kind of horror game where you are, for some reason, called to the biggest corporation in, I guess, the known world. The world not exactly being our world, but pretty close to it, unnamed world. So you're called to this corporation to have a job that you know nothing about that grants you like an increased status in, the world, I guess. There's like a class system. So you go up to the top floor to meet whoever and sign your contract. And the words "kill the witch" are just written on the back wall. And you find out that apparently this corporate building is like haunted by a supernatural witch or something. And it's this like interesting blend between old supernatural with like modern corporate grind. It's like if Office Space were a horror movie, kind of. It's like the people are still like, drab, lifeless, boring workers who just kind of shrug off the fact that there are dead bodies on the floor because that's just what the grind is like, It's a really great game in terms of like just kind of going through it. It's fun and it's kind of like the soundtrack's amazing. Michael Garrod did it. He did the soundtrack for the Valhalla bartending game. Amazing composer, wonderful guy.
Oh wow!
The soundtrack is excellent, and the whole time you have like this nice feeling if you're into horror of like I don't know what's going on and I don't know what's around any corner, but you're never like pulled away from the corporate setting. For example, there's a point where you need an object to cut something, and the only object you can find is like a plastic party knife from the common area, or like you need to like throw something sharp, and the only thing you can find are like sharpened pencils. So it's like really kind of like cheeky. It's very like anti-corporate, but also at the same time, it's very like surreal in a lot of ways. Beautiful game. It's very fun. Highly recommended. They just came out with basically the director's cut a couple months ago. That added like a whole new sideline, a whole new ending, lots of interesting things about the lore. The lore is insane. A wonderful game.
Yeah.
I just love how unique this game looks and feels. Just with the whole comedy and horror like smushing together. You like hunting a witch to help like unravel the secrets of a company's dark past. I love this quote by Waypoint or Vice Games saying, "A horror comedy adventure that pulls no punches about the hellish nature of the toxic workplace." Such a interesting concept, I think.
Yeah,
and it's very well executed too. I made Can play like a couple hours, I think. What do you think, Can?
Sorry, I was just going to say, actually, I was exactly going to say that you actually, your glowing review back then actually made me start to try it out of curiosity. and it was one of the, I think, best intros, like the first 15 minutes, I guess. I played more than that, a bit more by now, but the first, like the way they kind of pull you into the game was just so well done. It was one of the best examples of pacing, I think, for that I've seen in a while. And it's such a such a fascinating way of building this world, because it feels so uncanny. It feels so realistic, but at the same time surreal. At the same time, and I think it just added to the whole, I guess, a horror atmosphere they were going for.
I'm scared. I'm crawling between filing cabinets. I don't know why all my coworkers are acting like zombies. All I know is I gotta kill that witch.
And that's not even the game. That's real life for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the name as well.
Life skills.
I love the name as well. Yuppie Psycho. And the it's called Executive Edition as well. It's just humorous looking game, and the graphics look great too.
Yeah, it like on all fronts, it's pretty. I think if I had to make complaints, there are a couple little tiny gameplay and puzzle like snafus, but nothing too big to worry about.
Were there what tiny disappointments did you have with the game?
Oh, they're like very niche, tiny ones. Like if you had to play it, then you would know. But I guess, for example, for the people who've played it, probably agree. There's these little landmines on the ground at a certain point, and the puzzle is either to try to avoid them or disable them by throwing the aforementioned pencil into their weak spot. The thing is that if you come too close to them, they'll explode on you. And if you're too far away from them, you can't throw the pencil.
Right.
And so you kind of have to edge close enough to them that the light turns reddish before it explodes. You have to run into your menu and then click on the pencil, and then it throws it. And then it's like, okay, if that's like a simple puzzle, okay, you solve the puzzle, great. But the mines are kind of all over the place. And so you're constantly creeping towards these little mines and then doing a little menu spam.
Oh, right.
Probably like the most tiny complaint you can imagine.
Because that's sort of like the kind of thing where if you've done it once, it will sort of it doesn't outstay its welcome. But because it's so often and frequent, it's kind of like a little bit of an annoyance, and all these little things add up. I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly just one section of the game. They make an appearance later. They aren't too big of a deal, but usually in one section of the game, you're just kind of creeping around mines, throwing pencils at them. And I'm just there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah, even the image of that thrills me for some reason. Throwing pencils at
you like it. I highly recommend you play it.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a go, I think. So that's the games we've been maybe playing. We're about to move to our next segment, topics we must discuss, because this is a podcast, and it's serious. Here's the part of the podcast where we ask the serious questions. Yeah, we're just going to ask a few questions of our our lovely guests here. But our first question is, how did you come about making games?
Well, it's kind of a boring story. I was writing an emo story in high school, as one would, and I just wanted to see it. Just kind of walk around in the world, So I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to hear the sound from it. So I looked into any kind of game maker kind of thing, and I found rmrk.net, I believe it was back then. It was the unofficial RPG maker at the time that they were supporting. It just kind of started off from there. I joined the community, and it's just one community to another since then.
Which engine was that? Which engine did you start with?
It was XP. It was RPG Maker XP. Although I think I might have tried 2K3 for a brief period of time, but I jumped in XP and stayed there for 10 years.
Yeah.
More than that, actually.
And so RMRK was the community you were involved with, and then
it was, yeah.
How did you kind of start to make, say, longer games or experiences, the stuff that you would eventually come to make?
Well, I got into game development, or wanted to, because I was trying to turn a specific story I was writing back then into an interactive thing. So I pretty much just jumped right into it, and it was called Quintessence, as you were mentioning, which is why. So I started making that, and then of course as how it is always, that after the first few months, I realized how bad it was, and I started redoing it again. And then that happened a few times, actually. So actually, I think that's like an ongoing thing with the game. So yeah, that's essentially that's I just kept on making that one single game over and over until I started, the other little projects and then the To the Moon series.
Yeah, that's quite a common kind of theme where people remake games from scratch because they're not happy with how the last time they did it. So they'll say, okay, now with my new knowledge that I have, I'm going to try and create it better this time. And I suppose...
Yeah, and it's never going to happen again.
And I suppose over time you became more confident with your abilities and then you started to create maybe longer, more complex games?
No, I bit off more than I can chew immediately. That's like I started making that like supposedly like 20-hour epic RPG. It's not epic by many standards, but by I guess by my standards it was. But yeah, I started immediately, but I never made it. In fact, up to this day, I've never finished it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a recurring life goals kind of thing. #.
And then eventually you just go on to create some more games and then get into the commercial sphere, I suppose, from there. We'll probably delve into that a little later, but I think I'll redirect this question to Merlandese. How did you come about making games?
I started with, I don't remember who bought it or how I came across it, but my friend and I had the old PlayStation version. Like I think it might be the very first RPG Maker.
Right.
Did you play that one?
No, I didn't manage to get.
Have you ever touched that? Oh well, it was wild because like if you wanted to make like Franken sprites, like you couldn't, right? You had to like draw your own sprite sheet, and it would save like a ton of space on your memory card for your PlayStation. It was incredible. But my friend and I played that a lot. And I think even from the very beginning, I was already trying to like get away from the inherent battle system. I was trying to make like little Harvest Moon-alikes, or like change it so that you could fight live action, kind of like Quintessence style. It just didn't have the capabilities. But eventually, my cousin, he got RPG Maker XP, pirated it somehow, and I played it on his computer. And I was just making these games just for years, playing around on this. No idea anyone else was playing this. No idea there was a community. And finally, it just like got into my head. It's like, maybe I should like Google it, maybe I should just like go online and like search and see if anyone else is doing it. I think one of the first things that popped up was Quintessence by this guy named Kan Gao. I don't know if you know him. And he had it up there, and there were like people talking about how great it was. And I was like, wow, that does look great, man. Look at this stuff I've been making. Played it, loved it. I think I played like Castle Chase too. And I was like, oh my goodness, people are making games in here, and there's a community. So then I joined Freebird forums, and I just kind of became like, a lurker. I just hung around and like talked to people about stuff and learned that there were terms for things and, better ways to do them. And yeah, that's basically how I got started.
So you would have got started a little bit later than Kan, I suppose. Right.
It sounds a little earlier, actually.
Oh, earlier. Okay.
I think it might technically be earlier. It's just that it was all like private.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's fascinating. Could I ask, like, how did you make the sprites with the PS version of RPG Maker? Do you just use a controller?
It's like impossible. Yes, you use a controller. Yes, you use a controller. All right, and like the controller, it's like D-pad. I don't remember if they had joysticks on the PlayStation controller at that time. It's been a while. I think maybe some did, some didn't. But you use the D-pad, and it functioned like a joystick. So it didn't move in pixel segments. It floated around with like an acceleration and deceleration and max speed. And then you had to land it on the spot and go and like press the color, like the insert color that you had already selected from like the color wheel somewhere. I remember I made like pretty much exactly like 3 sprites. One was some weird pale giraffe. One was a guy who just had a square for a head because it was the only way I could possibly fill a sprite sheet with every single movement. The 4x4 of movement is just like, what, forget about head, just go square.
It's like a game on hard mode in and of itself. Except there are consequences.
And then I was like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with the like 17 default sprites they have on here and like the six songs. I'll just go with it.
Did you create any finished sort of games in that an engine, or did you was it just all ended up being incomplete?
Oh yeah, absolutely complete. In that, like, I deleted them. No, I never finished a single game.
Oh right.
It was at that time in your life where the stories that you're making, I wasn't as poetic as Can, like trying to like lay down my emo story. I think that's a much better tale. For me, it was just like I had some friends at school, and I had this large binder where we would write RPG ideas, and I would draw pictures and make weapons and stats, and then I just tried to somehow condense that into like a nugget in RPG Maker for PlayStation, which is just impossible to do. So it was basically, my friends' characters, and then we would just interact, almost like playing House or The Sims. It was not really like a plot or anything.
Would that say when you began Fleuret? How do you pronounce Fleuret Blanc?
Well, I'll tell you how I pronounce it, but you need to ask someone who speaks French, and they're going to tell you that I sound like a moron. But I call it Fleuret Blanc.
Okay.
But I know that like Blanc is supposed to be like Blanc.
Yeah.
But Fleuret Blanc is how I do it.
Well, let's just say word of God. It's however you say it is what's the correct pronunciation. You heard it here first, all listeners. This. But
it's a fictional French language that just has that one single difference from the word.
Yeah. So you started creating these sort of games, different sort of games in RPG Maker XP, and you progress sort of from there.
Yeah. I think the first thing that happened, I don't actually remember Can, maybe you do, but I joined the forum, and he was working on To the Moon, I think in semi-secret. I don't remember. He sent me a message. He's like, hey, you want to like work a little bit on this? And so I think like getting into doing anything in RPG Maker again, I think the most that like happened was like me messing around with the puzzles in To the Moon and whatnot. But then I think either around the same time or a little bit after is when I started working on Fleuret Blanc. And one of the things was that I didn't like Frankenspriting. And I was like, why would I play with these pixels when I can just draw the pictures and scan them into RPG Maker?
Yeah.
And so Fleuret Blanc is like pretty much almost entirely like hand-drawn and scanned poorly and then like colored in GIMP. Yeah. I pretty much like went from Fleuret Blanc there and then Social Caterpillar and just kept on moving along.
And that was one of the more unique styles I've seen too. I think the way you went about creating those assets actually contributed to it.
Yeah, the unique kind of feel of the game and the hand drawn, sort of like Sunset over Imdal, just contributed to the unique style of the game, and then I think it just would have progressed from there, right?
Yeah, probably Amdal probably had, because I had played that before. That was probably back when I first came on and was looking to it. So I definitely knew about it and played it and was impressed by it. Probably that contributed to it too. It's like this idea that you could just kind of draw things and put them in there, which no one was really doing at the time that I saw, but maybe other than Amdal, I don't really know. I never got deep into some of the really kind of like important RPG Maker games like Blurred Line, like you talked about before, and Off. I never really got into those. So I think at the time I thought I was doing something a little more unique, but maybe I wasn't. Who knows?
I think it stands kind of feel and art style, and certainly in gameplay mechanics. And I'll kind of move this on to the next question, which is about inspiration and creation. I'd like to ask about what are your favorite kinds of games, or what inspired you to create the kind of game that you create currently. Can will create sort of story-driven, interactive pieces that are based around emotion, even kind of weightless moments of, not weightless narratively, but sort of the feeling that you're suspended in air, and it's almost like your game soar in a way. And then for Merlandese, it would be, for me, I think it's quite relationship-based and repartee and wittiness. And so were there any kind of inspirations that lead you in this sort of direction?
For me, it's actually kind of weird because the games I tend to play, at least spend most time playing, is very different from the kind of game I like to make. I play a lot of card games like, Slay the Spire, Hearthstone, and just like strategy games like Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the oldies. I spend most of my time playing games like that. But I think inspiration-wise, it's nothing mystical at all. I kind of just stare at a wall. I think actually most of my motivation, inspiration actually comes from a lack of my ability to communicate well normally, especially back then. I'm now slightly more practiced, but still not that well. Basically, it's like I sometimes think of it like, people have social needs, right? You kind of have things you kind of want to communicate to others, and it's like an inflating balloon. When it has enough pressure, the air is going to go out. So for me, like the normal outlet is kind of tight and sealed in a bit, in a way.
Yeah.
So as the pressure kind of builds, I kind of have to make something to kind of convey these things that I have trouble using only words to do so. So that's kind of that's kind of like a big push, perhaps the biggest push behind a lot of my projects in general, or just the fact that I'm making things or creating anything in general. Just to kind of convey a certain thing I want to convey, or else I'm going to blow up.
I've seen that in some developers where the type of game they play is not necessarily matching up with the game that they create. That's actually quite common phenomenon I've seen.
Yeah, I don't play a whole lot of AAA games. Part of that is because a lot of games are so FPS, I think, and maybe sometimes too taxing for my computer. But like I play around with like Slay the Spire. That's a great game. But I think in general, I do actually kind of play games that I kind of want in a way. Not that I ever exactly do, because games are so different, especially in the indie world. But like I think I'll play a game and sometimes be like, oh, wow, that's inspiring. And then just kind of like stop playing the game because now I'm inspired by something about it.
You don't want to play too much of the game because then it will influence too much of what you're trying to create. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't think I think of it like that. I think of it more like it's like now I have an itch to scratch. There's this author I read sometimes. His name is Matthew Pearl. He writes a bunch of books that star literary figures, and they're always talking about books. And whenever I read one of his books, I want to put down the book and read a book. It's like I get inspired to like read books by reading the book. And so it's kind of like this like worm eating its own tail sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I do get inspired by playing different games. But I think the things that usually inspire me the most are kind of when you have a small idea and you find bigger ways to explore it. With Fleuret Blanc, for example, the idea of like, what if possessions, essentially, right? Like, what does it mean to own things to you? And for me, it's just like every character is a different expression of what it means to have materialism. Sure. In Last Word, it's essentially like, what's the premise of the game? What if, words had actual physical power? But the demonstration at the beginning of the game where people are just kind of arguing about, after you go in the door. No, you. It's just like, what if bigger, And so I think those are the things that usually kind of inspire me is when I'm like playing a game or watching a movie or reading a book and I see that they have a core idea and they somehow like unwrap it like it's a giant blanket and spread it thinly over everything. I get inspired by that. I think like, oh man, I wish I could do that. Sometimes maybe I think I succeed. Sometimes I just take it off in my own direction. But I think that's usually the thing that gets me going.
And I forgot to kind of point out one of your distinguishing traits that I've seen. I think it's some sort of like, especially in Last Word, it was a sort of parody or satire kind of aspect, this kind of sarcastic view of certain aspects of humanity, and you were trying to like, I guess, examine that in a way. I think that's kind of rare. The only other developer in the RPG Maker sphere I see that sort of centers on that. Well, there's a few. I think one of them would be In Space Funeral. Cat Mitz has done a little bit of that, and then there's also Calunio. There's other, but I think it's quite a distinguishing factor.
Nice.
And I also like when you talk about premise as well, like how each game sort of answers a dramatic question that you're trying to you ask a question and then you make a game that kind of answers that question in a certain kind of way.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever succeeds exactly in that manner, right? But like when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking like, how do I provoke the thought about it? And that's kind of where I go in that direction.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of the genre of science fiction as a whole, right? Because you kind of take a what if and you take it to the extreme. And then in that process, you explore a lot of interesting concepts.
Yeah, and I like sci-fi.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of that kind. Yeah, like what if words actually physically hurt your opponents, and you could wield them like swords and maces and so on. I think that's got quite a humorous impact to it, even just in its concept alone. So
Yeah, social caterpillar is kind of the same. It's like, what if your social energy were like tied to your ability to socialize? A little more of a on the nose inversion puzzle thing, but it's kind of just explores that one idea really.
I feel like that's pretty much almost exactly how it is, rather than what if.
What if in quotes.
What is your sort of step-by-step process? Is there some sort of structure to the way that you create a game? Is there certain methods that you use? What's your kind of structured process?
For me, I guess it's like the saying of how you write how does a monkey rather write a mystery novel? And the answer is they write the ending first. So it's the same for me, pretty much. I kind of have, it all comes down to usually conveying a particular feeling at a moment in time. And that's usually what I want someone who goes through this experience to feel at the very end, right before the credits starts to roll. And it kind of just goes from there. It kind of goes backwards from there to how to get to that particular point. And it goes from a abstract particular like feeling to a set of events that end up in that route, end up in that position, kind of. At least that's how it happens most of the time. Other than that, it's kind of emotional storytelling, but behind the scenes, it's a lot of it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle in a way. You kind of gotta put everything together in a way that makes sense. So it's a lot of just problem solving and piecing together puzzles, I guess, in reverse.
Yeah. I've heard that about certain narratives. I think Pixar does that, where they write the ending, they make it satisfying, and they draw backwards from that. Yeah, Merlandese, what's your specific method, I suppose, step-by-step process, if you have one?
I guess if I really want to get into like the nitty-gritty of what you mean, like method more mechanically, I guess I'll be a little more mundane here. Like usually when I'm making a game, I have a notebook and I like writing and just drawing and doing everything I can. And like the process of like putting it down somehow like inscribes it in my brain. And then, sometimes I'll write dialogues in a Google document, or I have tons of Excel sheets that just keep track of ideas. And you would think looking at all that it's like completely organized from A to Z. But really it's like all of that is just to kind of inscribe it in my brain. I deviate all the time from what I've like planned when it comes down to the actual making of the game. But there's a lot of the process where it's like, instead of just jumping into like the engine and like typing things out or programming ideas, I usually just kind of like doodle something. And maybe sometimes I'll doodle something that's just like, all right, well, that's definitely not going to work. But now that I've drawn it, like it's in my brain that it's not going to work. So that's usually kind of how I do it.
Yeah, there's a seed in there that you can kind of build off. And I guess you kind of iteratively move on from there. Excellent. Well, that's the end of the questions that I have for right now. And now we're going to go into our next segment, which is the question book.
Ad break.
In a world of trash, a group of heroes will rise to save humanity from itself. A blood mage, a fencing ace, and
a hippo? That's right, you can play as all these characters and more in the new dark, comedic, satire, dystopian game Trash Planet, available now on itch.io, rpgmaker.net, and GameJolt. Best part is, it's totally free. Thank you so much, and I love you.
This is the segment where we've asked people from the RPG Maker community, users, to ask questions related to game development, design that we probably don't know the answers to, but we'll try. We have quite a few questions for Kan and Merlandese this time round. It seems like almost double the amount of questions that we usually have. Our first question is from Lupat28R, or Festivized Kill Streak. This one's for Kan, and I'll also extend it to Merlandese. What led to the game Freebird Games? And I'll also ask to Merlandese, why the name 12 Tiles?
For Freebird Games, it's actually a matter of, look, birds are cool, all right. It was also one of my. I think it mostly had to do with the character in my first game, who turned into a bird. I guess arguably the main character, or what becomes the main character eventually. But yeah, and then pretty much all my games had birds or birds themes in it, I suppose. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, well, first of all, birds are cool. But second, I just really like the number 12. I think it's like one of those perfect numbers. If we had like a base 12 system instead of base 10, I think it'd be great. But really, I just need the 12 tiles because the very first game I made was Econ. You can buy it now on Steam, Econ Elemental Connection. It just uses tiles. And before I was familiar with like board games that use tiles, I was like, wow, I'm using tiles instead of like cards. I'm a genius. But I just kind of like the name 12 tiles after that. Easy peasy.
Also, an additional plug for Econ. That's Econ. Actually, a really, really good game. Very simple to the point.
Another question by Lupat. What is each of your process for building a character?
My process for building a character, I can't say that I've actually thought about it enough to be able to like peg it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in general, it just kind of goes back to what I mentioned before. Usually I kind of like characters to represent a little bit of a different idea of the theme I'm going for. And then from there, I just kind of find a personality that I think matches with it. There's one thing I usually do, though, that is kind of like goes from game to game, which is that I try to make some sort of nuance in the way that the character talks that's different from everyone else. Sometimes it can be as obvious as, like, say, a Southern accent. Sometimes it could be like the difference between certain word usage. For example, in Last Word, Miss Prattle had this weird quirk where she would use the adjective and then the noun. So she'd be like, oh, what about all this atrociousness? It's like kind of to reflect her inability to think outside of the box. And so that's just kind of what I do.
Yeah, it adds to the memorability, I think, when you have these little quirks for the characters.
Yeah, it really does. For me, I guess for me, it's more a matter of, I guess it's almost like, not every case, but oftentimes it's the characters are who I sometimes daydream I could be, but I never could be. I find myself like, because I'm
a bird, right?
Yeah, that explains a lot of the games.
You don't know if Kan can become a bird or not. You know, it's a possibility.
You didn't know if I was already a bird trying to pretend to be human. But yeah, I don't have Asperger's per se, but this is kind of a weird thing to start off with, but I find myself kind of like I guess Isabel in To the Moon, where she kind of learns a lot of the social stuff from almost like, it's kind of sees almost like acting in a way. And I kind of oftentimes, like whenever I watch other characters on TV or whatnot, I kind of just imagine myself being that person, and I always have, like, you know, in my head, I'm always kind of trying to be a different person than who I actually am. But sometimes I kind of convince myself that I perhaps could be, and it never works out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of an extension of that, I guess. And I find myself, it's a lot easier to write characters when I try to incorporate elements of that and parts of who, I guess, even just piecing together parts of who I am or maybe could be together to yeah.
So you sort of have practice in building a character already with this kind of embodying aspect of it.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's never as mystical as it might sound or whatnot, but I think that's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in there that in To the Moon, Isabel is like my favorite character, and I think it's because of what he's talking about right now. I think she does a good job of conveying that energy. I think it's a well-written scene when she kind of opens up about that. So props.
Oh, thank you.
Next question, why RPG Maker and not some other engine? And if some games did not use RPG Maker, this is my addition, what made you choose the other engine that you chose to use?
It's simply the easiest way of accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish. Because I did, in fact, try some of the other engines at some point, like Game Maker, for example. But it had tools to make certain things better, but not it wasn't an improvement to the core of the game, at least as much relative to what I felt like the point of what I was trying to do was. So I really think, especially with smaller projects like this and with smaller teams or even solo projects, just being able to finish the game efficiently is so undervalued oftentimes. So RPG Maker to me was just the perfect balance of getting something done without overstepping that line of suddenly becoming inefficient and focusing on the side stuff.
Merlandese, why did you choose RPG Maker?
So when I was young, I got RPG Maker for PlayStation. No, basically the same reasons: accessibility and at a certain point, a kind of stubborn unwillingness to like change, but also like a love for the RPG Maker and like how easy it made it to like tell narratives. Basically, some of the same stuff as Kan.
Yeah. This is probably mostly for Kan, but maybe Merlandese too. I'm not too sure of their team makeup. How did you meet the team you work with currently? How did it come about?
Well, I met most of the folks I've worked with in the RPG Maker community, especially, including Lenny, of course. Like nowadays, I do have a full-time team kind of working on mostly on an unannounced project, but that was much later on, and I kind of met them through, well, I guess just hiring. There's not like I was kind of just through various ways. I was just a fan of what they were doing, and I wanted to work together with them.
Certain people caught your eye, kind of thing, with their talents.
Yeah, I would say so.
Can you explain how you usually look for certain talents in this way? Just real quick, I'm just a little curious myself. Like, do you go through Twitter or something?
Yeah, that's certainly one way, and I really think looking at what they have done is the best way to tell. And sometimes if you just have, because sometimes it's not just about what they can do, but also what they're interested in, and I think that you can tell best by looking at what they've been doing or what they like to do in their pastime. But oftentimes too, there are also cases, of course, where people can adapt, and some folks on the team are like that too, and they've adapted wonderfully, and you can and you could be confident about them because of they've just been doing wonderful stuff all around. So as long as there's interest to divert, then that works. But going back to, I guess, the project so far, like that people are more familiar with, I think it's just from the community, and which just goes to say that it's so important to just be an active participant in the community, because where else people won't know that you're out there.
In my current projects, I don't really have much of a like study team, except I work with musician and Argentinian rock god Fernando Ferd K. Rabajal. I'm probably messing up his last name. I'm terrible at Spanish. But he and I have been working on Plastibo Love's audio a lot, and then mostly I piggyback on the Freebird community, right? I think even Ferd I met in Freebird, and sometimes I ask Kan, hey, will you do stuff for me? And then sometimes I ask people in the community, will they do stuff for me? And that's mostly how I extort their free labor. That's just the name of the game at that point, right?
Yeah, actually, that reminds me of the good old times back then, where it was kind of like a barter system in the community, right? It's like you help me with art, I'll help you with music, and vice versa and stuff like that. It was, not vice versa, but yeah, it was such a nice and just like because everyone was just in there for the I guess the creative spirit or whatnot, and it was just a
it can spring from
our mutual friend Joel. Our mutual friend Joel. I just want to say it still kind of works this way. Our mutual friend Joel, he does the little voice blips in my upcoming game, and in exchange, I'm going to read and edit his first draft of a novel he's working on. So we're just kind of exchanging,
Skill trade. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, remember even with Laura Shigehara, I think I met her on the RPG Maker community as well, and she helped out the project so much, tremendously as well. And I think she was making a game on there too. It was rpgmaker.org, rmxp.org. It's just so many communities.
Gord Clay from rpgmaker.net asks, I've played Fleuret Blanc, which is how it's canonically pronounced, and Last Word, and I'm a big fan of Merlandese. I'm really interested in how Merlandese constructs a mystery. Do you start with a theme, the characters, the plot beats, and where do you get your inspiration for such a thing?
Great. Well, I think I covered a lot of these answers, which is, fine. I usually do start with a theme, yeah. And you know how the characters work. With the plot, what's kind of more interesting, I think, in terms of mysteries, is what I do is I do a lot of arcing back. So when I start constructing, I'm kind of like the opposite of Kan in this way. I don't always know exactly how it's going to end. What I do know is as I approach the end, when I introduce the material that makes it work, I always find some way to connect it backwards. So I might rewind a little bit and change a little piece of dialogue to kind of foreshadow something. And that's usually how I set up all of the mysteries, is instead of setting up dominoes that can be knocked over from front to back, I set up every other domino. And then as I go forward, I throw one backwards. That's usually how I do it.
That's a great way to construct foreshadowing, which is like a dramatic technique that arguably RPG Maker games need to learn a bit more of. Yeah, and as for both Kan and Merlandese, what do you consider when you're trying to tie narrative and gameplay together? Are there places you feel you could improve with these gameplay systems and so on that you have in your games?
I honestly, for this question, the answer is I'm bad at it, and I don't know.
Gotcha.
It's definitely one of the area that I should be improving on a lot more. Ideally, what I want to do is to just simply bring people in. Of course, the two should tie in a way that the gameplay ties in how someone should be feeling right at the particular point in the narrative. In terms of if it's a hectic area, if it's a hectic segment, then the gameplay should put them on their toes, and vice versa. If it's kind of like a slow slow drip kind of thing, then it shouldn't be. But yeah, in practice, it's something I should be working on. I feel like I've been getting a bit better with it in Finding Paradise.
It's sort of like, because even exploration and structure, I'd consider that part of gameplay. And the systems that you use for discovering the new story nodes, in that sense, it is glued together in that way. But yeah, that's what I find. Sometimes, it's just in the way that it's subtle structure things that can kind of even just help the way that the story's told, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I am too in the boat of feeling like even just the way you walk in a game, it's still part of the experience, and it feels very different. I used to use the example where, so my wife loves watching horror movies, but she cannot play horror games. And she's never afraid of the movies, but she is afraid of the horror games. And oftentimes the only difference is in the horror game, you walk. You don't even do anything. You just walk and you run when you see something, right? But just that addition of walking, it changes it to an entirely different kind of experience. So there's actually a lot more power to it than just, I guess, walking simulator, the way it sounds.
Yeah, because your games are such narrative experiences that rely on timing and momentum, I feel like you have to focus probably a bit more on the tiny aspects of, okay, is the walking speed just right? Can they walk into this room? Will it be too early? All these little kind of aspects where you're trying to sort of time it all out and make sure that it feels good.
I'm glad you both came to kind of like the timing thing, because as a longtime follower of Kan's work, let's just pretend Kan isn't here right now. I agree with you, Benny, popping in and talking about exploration as a type of gameplay. And in this way, like when I enjoy Kan's work, what I usually see is like a lot of directing, like a lot of structured momentum. And I believe from just like a person who's sitting in the back playing and enjoying and picking it apart, that is exactly that. If there's any sort of gameplay element in there, of course it's trying to like evoke the emotion that's supposed to be happening for whatever reason. But also it's about timing. I think like the lengths of corridors are the time they need to be for you to digest your food before you go on to the next meal. I think he does a great job at that. And saying that like exploration is like the gameplay element is kind of true, but like it's also kind of a nice framing, it's a nice breath. Like when he lets you walk around at whatever speed he lets you walk around it, like that's exactly the amount of space and the amount of time you need before the next thing. And I think that works really well.
Oh, that's actually a really interesting way of putting it. It does make sense in some way, but now I'm just like, when I see a hallway, I'm gonna think intestines.
You probably do it without even thinking about it. It comes second nature to you, or you've just practiced it so much that it's just like the back of your hand, I suppose.
It's like 100 times. It's 100 revisions.
Yeah, you're right. You kind of maybe even obsess over those small details, right?
Yeah, actually, honestly, I feel like I should be careful of saying this, but with the remake of To the Moon, for example, I think they've done many things wonderfully and many things even better than the original. But one of the things I felt like they didn't do as well, which it's really hard to. It's the little details of like the little pacing of things, the little pauses, and and that's just really hard to. One is that they didn't have enough time with those things, I think, and the other is it's harder to remake something from as a third party than to make something original in a way, and keep the little details of, because it's impossible to know why they were there.
Because even the number of milliseconds between an action and another one, it's sort of very cinematic. It's not usually this important, I suppose.
Yeah, like I don't think it's that important at all to most people's mind when they think about something like this. And in fact, it still might not be. I honestly don't know. But if you open up the projects, if you hack the project, which you can, you can open it at the unencrypted versions, and you can look on the cutscene scripts. You can see all the wait time frames are they're not like 10 frames, 20 frames. They're like 7 frames, 6 frames, 3 frames, and it comes from just me obsessively, that's a keyword, of redoing everything and then changing like 1 frame, 2 frames. Actually, and to me, it feels like there's a difference, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm too close to it, so I can never tell. But it's something that I always try to fine tune.
No, to me, it's quite obvious, and I feel like it's a signature kind of aspect of your games. They wouldn't be as cinematic, I feel, as they are if you didn't obsess over those small details. That's just my opinion about it.
Thanks. I hope so.
I guess if I throw my 2 cents in there to tie narrative and gameplay together, I usually just try to look at, just like all the other ideas, I just try to think of like how, I think I'm a little more mechanically focused sometimes in the merging of the theme to a something. Not always, but like Social Caterpillar, it's like 100% of what it is. Like the narrative is the gameplay. You're supposed to be solving these little puzzles to kind of to untie the mystery of what it is to just have a small conversation with a random stranger. How they come about is probably a little more about how I think and not as much as I wished as what is appropriate for the actual theme of the game. I think sometimes we all have our like own ways of thinking. And I think sometimes when my gameplay comes out, it's just like, well, that's just kind of like what Lanny likes and how he thinks, and that's how he ties themes to mechanics. It's mostly that.
I was actually gonna say, like, when I was seeing the question, I just remembered. I mean, I just thought of that. Lanny's games are pretty much it's mostly almost all the games in some way is about turning the narrative into gameplay. It's just it's abstracting the theme in a way, like it's kind of abstracting a human being, like a part of humanity, I guess, not to sound dramatic, and how the world works and how people work into a playable system. And so it's always fascinating to think back to how that actually makes sense after the fact, but it takes a lot more work afterwards rather than you feel what is going on spontaneously as you play, which is actually part of the reason why I think a lot of Merlin's games are kind of underappreciated. I know, because it actually takes a lot of work to appreciate the genius behind it.
Oh my goodness, genius! You dropped a G-bomb. I like it. I think they're a little obtuse. I agree. Like a lot of getting into it, it's kind of hard to get into it. I think maybe reflecting back, I hope you're right, and people think about it afterward. But I think they are a little obtuse sometimes.
Yeah, that's one of the aspects I like about it, is that the gameplay drives the narrative as well. They're so tightly linked, and I enjoy that about Merlandese's games. So T from Driftwood Gaming, quite a special guest, asks to Kan, will Quintessence ever be finished? And will you move to a more optimized engine for your next game, say MZ or any other engine?
I mean, it is kind of why I got into making games to begin with. I don't think most people know about it yet, though. So, yeah, I mean, if that's...
I was talking with T. I think T said Quintessence was their favorite game.
I appreciate it. It's actually my favorite too. Maybe everything else is just detour. But to be fair, like to anyone who don't know about it, don't look it up. It is at least not now. It's you know, what is it? How long has it been? 15 years. I was a wee lad, not even drinking whiskey at the time. So it's not up to. Yeah.
As for engines, either of you are thinking about, are you? I think Merlandese has already moved on from RPG Maker. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I'm using Construct 2 right now, which will be obsolete next year. I'll probably move to Construct 3. We'll see where it goes.
And as for Kan, will you be using XP in future?
I think I might still use it for some minor projects, but I am also planning to move to a different engine, possibly Unity.
Rexus asks, ask Kan why I'm his favorite. It's true. No, they want to ask, spoilers for A Bird Story incoming. Rexus wants to ask about A Bird Story. It seems like a very personal story and has always been one of my favorite games, Rexus says. Kan, did you always have Faye in mind when the bird was designed? What struggles did you face when you designed it, and would you ever make something like it again?
So actually with this one, A Bird Story was kind of an odd thing. It actually cut in line. So I did have most of, at least the gist of the core of Finding Paradise story before A Bird Story. I was going to make Finding Paradise after To the Moon, so it was going to come out 3 years earlier, but then A Bird Story kind of got in the way. So yes, in some ways, I did have that before A Bird Story.
Dan, or U7Q2NBWF, asks, to both Kan and Merlandese, are there challenges in making voice and dialogue convey what you want, since the dialogue only goes forward when the player wants? And I think they also ask about voice acting, whether you'd want to include voice acting in your games.
But I thought, I'm pretty sure many, if not all of Merlin's games do have voice acting of some sorts.
Yeah, I think that second question was for Kan.
Oh, yeah, their voice barks, and Kan knows because he's been some of those voices. But yeah,
yeah, I've been barking for Merlin's games for a long time.
Yeah, either of you, are there any challenges in making the voice and dialogue convey what you'd like in games?
I don't find too many difficulties in it. As long as you use the writing correctly, you can usually get people to kind of say it, whether they're thinking in their head or whether they're speaking it in a Let's Play. Usually say it at the kind of pace that you want. So as long as you write it correctly and pace it correctly, you see Kan and myself too cut ideas sometimes into multiple dialogue boxes just to kind of get the pacing of how they want the idea to be introduced. I guess there's a little finesse to it, but I think it's just generally dialogue writing.
Yeah, I mean, when, with the written dialogues, whenever something goes wrong or I don't know about how to do something, I just put more ellipses. It's easy to do with text. Ellipses everywhere. That's my style. But it's, yeah, for me too, it's the... one is, of course, it's easier to invent your own voice. I mean, the voice for each character in your head, the one that you feel like it's the most fitting, more freely when it's just text. And the other is actually, I feel like, it's kind of odd, but I feel like the way, whether or not they have voice actors, whether you hear the dialogues read to you or not, actually affects how you should write dialogues. And it's just it's like every other experience actually affects the dialogues and what fits as well. And even with the graphics, right? Even if you have a cartoony graphics versus you have a realistic gritty graphics, like the type of dialogue you write that fits is different. So oftentimes I find myself actually preferring to not have the dialogue read out for sure, because I can get away with a lot sillier stuff that way.
Yeah, exactly. There's the difference between the read dialogue and the one that's voiced out loud, I suppose. Yeah, you can have different focuses. This one's here's part 2 of the questions by Lupat28R. What is it like to see people's reaction to your games? How do you feel when this is my edition? How do you feel when people play them, talk about them, review them? What's your general feelings when this happens?
I love it. I love people's reactions. I love people's reviews. I love it when people have like thoughts, even if they're not what I'm going for, that like not what I was aiming for at the moment. It like helps me understand like what I did a little wrong. It helps me like prepare better for the next one. And I love watching Let's Plays. I love having people talk about it. My reaction is usually just generally joy. I think I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and it's very similar for me. And it's just a sense of curiosity, I suppose, too. Just to find out whether what you're trying to say is what people heard, and that's neither good or bad. But it's just it's such an interesting process, And as I was saying, for me, a lot of it is a matter of trying to communicate something. So just seeing that play out and finally seeing someone being able to receive the message, whether in its intended way or not, it's just a very cathartic experience, and it just feels like a big part, if not the main part of what I'm doing this for.
This question is from Starskip from rpgmaker.net. This one's specifically for Kan. They'd like to know how the upcoming anime film came about. If you're under a strict NDA, no worries, they say. I have no idea about this.
That in and of itself, it's kind of boring.
What's
really. Someone contacted me about it. I kind of looked into it, and I started talking with them. But the thing is, the interesting thing with it is that they weren't the first. Like, there were actually multiple film projects discussed in the years prior to that, and a lot of stories happened with those. I don't think I've shared them mostly. I don't think I can share some of them. But it went. Basically, I realized how the film industry, especially adaptation, in terms of it's very vast, and it's very nothing's as like, even if you get contacted by whoever you get contacted by, it doesn't mean much. Right, because a lot of the times people, like the companies, are just trying to soak up rights, right? So that if something happens, then they can have that access to it if they so choose. But they have access to a lot of things, and most of the time when they get rights to something, it's like, because To the Moon, like the series, it's very fortunate that it's got a good following, but in the grand scheme of things, in terms of, like, say, the film industry, it's still a very small fry in terms of the IP, quote unquote. So it's not like it's not like we have a lot of bargaining stuff and there's not too much in exchange for rights like that. So for me, it's always been just hoping for it to land in the right hands. So after some misadventures on that side of things, I've even stepped in one case where I kind of got scammed a bit, but that's another story. How interesting, how funny happenstances. But basically, eventually these guys found me, Dan Yang, and he was the person who brought the film Your Name to China with the right side of things. And it was very apparent that he was really passionate about the project, and that he knew the game, and that he wasn't just like a business person trying to acquire rights per se. It was just very apparent that he actually had a passion about this specific project. So we started talking, and essentially we started. I guess it really helped that I kind of stepped in a lot of holes beforehand to know what would be bad. And I felt like this wasn't it.
Yeah.
As for how it's going, I mean, it's going. That's what I can say. And obviously, a lot of things have happened, and it's also got a lot of delays and stuff too. But again, like not necessarily because of bad things. And I think one day it might become apparent what happened in a way when you find out other details about the project. But some years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago at least, maybe 2018, 2017, maybe 2017 actually. It's been quite a while, but I actually got an email from Embling. I think it's the company name, but it's basically the Embling Entertainment, the Steven Spielberg's company. And for oftentimes when people, I think a lot of people actually know that I'm kind of bad at keeping track of my emails and just responding on time and just even keeping track of it at all. So like I found that out like 6 months later when I was cleaning out my inbox for some reason, and I was like, oh, what is this email? I didn't even see it at the time. That was 6 months later. So I replied to them. I was like, hey, I'm here now. And they're like, oh, sorry, we found a different project. So, and then Ready Player One came out sometime later. So, but again, I'm not. This is just for a kind of a fun trivia kind of thing, not to say by any means that had I responded in time that anything would have happened, but it's kind of fun to imagine that's a possibility. Alternative timeline.
Yeah, I kind of feel like blaming you for the Ready Player One movie. I think that's what I'm going to do from now on.
Not even a cameo in that movie too.
Yeah, and our last question of the question box section is by Lord Blue Rouge from RPGmaker.net. They ask, any advice for those starting out? And I assume making games.
Yeah, no time like right now, I mean, just do it, I guess. Nike said it best.
For sure. And I would also say to not to think too much, because when you think too much, you don't act. So really, it's just about actually making something and just going ahead at it. Join a community, make something, post it, and don't be sucked into the whole I don't know, like the comparing and whatnot. I really hope those who get into making something, it's just for their own sake, for your own sake. And I still remember actually one of the, like, I'm in such a strange and fortunate position now, but back when I started, I was making games and I was posting them on like the rmrk.net, I think that was the URL. And I would get like a reply every a week or two or something like that for a while. And that was just so exciting for me. And I think that was some of the most exciting times I've had in my whole career, quote unquote, making games, because it's just, it felt like finally having my message heard, or having something I was trying to say reach people, for better or for worse. So yeah, I would just say to find your drive and just go at it and just make something and post it. And if no one responds, wait a while, make some more things and post it again. And just don't think too much, go at it.
I said this off audio that I was going to shoehorn this in somewhere. There's a quote that I like that goes, now I can't remember it now that I've built myself up. A writer is a person who can't not write.
There we go.
So that's some good advice. It's just like, if you can't not do it, then you're already doing it. Just keep doing it,
Yeah. There's that sort of feedback loop that you can get that Cam was describing, where it's good to both receive and give feedback. So even, Cam admits that early on, feedback can sort of be some kind of balm to the soul of the developer. You get a little bit of a third-person perspective, because, you're making games. Quite a few of us are making games to be played. And if someone plays your game or feeds back, reviews it, or so on, I personally, as a developer, that's made me all the more excited to actually create more.
I like that. The feedback is a balm. I think that's really nice.
Hopefully someone in a future podcast can quote me on that, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. So I don't know where I heard this from, but I feel like feedback is a balm.
Yeah, so let's go into our next segment, which is the deep dive. In this section, we deep dive into one of each of our guest projects and figure out what went on during the process, inspirations, and elsewise. My project for Kan is Finding Paradise, which serves as a sequel to the Moon and A Bird Story. It continues with the doctors, Eva and Neil, as they help to fulfill a wish for Colin, who is now bedridden, and it features a story that's quite emotional and what some would say melancholic, where they try to reconstruct the dying man's memories in order to fulfill his wish. Yeah, so what made you decide to create Finding Paradise? What was the sort of nexus point of creation for this?
I mean, I guess with all the games I try to make, I was trying to express something that I experienced at some point, but not necessarily literally. Like, for example, with To the Moon, I've never been in that situation, but it's about a particular feeling or a particular longing. With Finding Paradise too, it's kind of it was definitely kind of personal. Like with the sorry, by the way, what's the rule on spoilers for something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give the spoiler warning now. If you haven't played Finding Paradise and you want to save yourself the spoilers, go and play the game. It's a good game. Play To the Moon as well, and just kind of experience this emotional journey for yourself.
When I made To the Moon, I mean, I didn't know if it was gonna be a series, but I did know it can be a series, and I felt like it was one of the it was a rare case, honestly. It was a lucky case of something that could be a good candidate for a series. Because oftentimes with series and movies and sequels, or I mean stories and sequels and stuff like that, it often doesn't work well because with the first story, to have a good ending, you have to tie up the story, and to have a sequel is often to open that tie up again, which can sometimes and often be disastrous. But with the format of something like To the Moon and Finding Paradise in the series, it just lends itself so naturally to an overarching story fitted with like a story that can fully close itself up every episode. You know, you have the patient story, life story, and then you have the doctors and this whole overarching world around that. So it's just there's so much potential for exploring any topic there is to be explored with something like that. So with a patient story, and then do something more, I guess, profound in an overarching way with the doctors. So yeah, that's kind of what I felt like and it could be, and then that's what happened.
I'm going to actually jump over to Merlandese now with the game that they've chosen, which is Placebo Love. This is a game that is unreleased as of the date of this recording of this podcast. When Lorne Volley answers a mysterious email from Lady Love, he quickly finds his soulmate, twice. Twin strangers who look alike, talk alike, and act alike, but live in totally different cities. You play as Lorne's muse. Your task is to get him out of his safety zone to connect with family and friends, push at various views about love, and maybe even solve the mystery of his doppelganger soulmates. Wow, what a plot. It's a friendship scheduling simulator, so you can choose among Lorne's many acquaintances in a tight schedule, try not to neglect anyone, but also to find time to be alone. It's such a unique sounding game. You apparently only have 22 weekends to help Lorne sort out his life before you disappear. This is such an interesting sounding game, Placebo Love. What made you decide to make this game? What was the kind of ideation point for?
Yeah, it was
Placebo
actually a
Love?
long time ago. This is one of those ideas that I kind of had years and years ago. I want to say around 2012 or 2013 or something, a long time ago. And I even kind of started working on it with a couple of people that kind of got involved with the idea and then buried it and then like brought it back. I don't know, a couple of years ago, I decided, maybe I'll bring it back up. But the main idea, I think, was, I guess, like just thinking of like themes. The starting idea was just kind of like different people's interpretations of love and like what all that can mean. So, for example, there's a character in there who's like happily married and has a child. And for her, she has this struggle because she feels like, her love is finite. She felt like she loved her career. And then when she got married, she kind of had to split that time of love with her husband. And now like her child is her life. and she kind of struggles with the idea of like how many people you can fit in that pocket, you know. And the main character has this thing where it's basically like he's you know a lonely mid-20s person, and he wants to find the one. But through a series of supernatural circumstances, he actually finds the one twice. And what exactly does it mean to find your soulmate 2 times? So the idea kind of came about explorations of like different definitions and concepts of love, and all the people that he interacts with, unlike a normal sort of like harem simulator dating game, are more like people who reflect a different idea of what is going on in their life with love, but also like kind of deepens and helps solve the actually somewhat supernatural element of how it's possible that this one person can exist twice.
I would have never even imagined a concept like that, to be honest.
It has that trademark uncanny valley, just like the right amount of strangeness to a otherwise familiar world, I guess, with Lanny's games.
Feels very much sort of like a sort of eternal sunshine of the spotless mind type kind of about doppelgangers and love and romance and fantasy and all that.
I just recently watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things, an incredible movie. And I love Anomalisa too. Anomalisa's great. I like Kaufman. Kaufman's good. Ken, you know, of course, Sunshine. You've watched other Kaufman?
Actually, not the other ones you mentioned, no. But yeah, I do know of Sunshine. That was one of my favorites too. But it sounds like I should. It sounds like I would enjoy those other works of his.
Yeah, it's interesting. A little surreal, very talky. I like them.
Yeah, I love those sorts of films too. And it seems, if I were to put a through line, if I can, between Finding Paradise and Placebo Love, they've got themes of fantasy and reality and sort of love. And when you're thinking about the emotions and the emotional journey in your game, which is full of ups and downs, were you thinking about these themes when you were writing this? Yeah, what kind of themes were you thinking of when you're writing along these lines?
Oh, I see. No, I actually don't think about the themes much at all when I write any of these. I kind of have a general feeling or a general concept that I want to convey. But in terms of themes, I think it's really difficult for me to think of a theme and then transcribe it in a way. But it's much easier for me to think of a concept or a feeling and then transcribe it. Yeah. So with the realism and fantasy kind of thing, it's something that I felt like was quite relevant between the two games, but it wasn't something that I made the two games for intentionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite surreal, some of the aspects of your game. I mean, in your game, Merlandese, you have literally doppelgangers and love, that sort of surreal kind of quality. Did you have some sort of aspect of balancing the mundane and the kind of fantasy aspects of what you were writing?
Yeah, that's actually, I want to say that's probably a little bit of a handicap of mine is when I think about things, I guess I do tend to get a little more into the realm of science fiction and think like there's always an explanation for something, even if I never describe it. Cam knows this about me. I'll like invent a little part of the universe that'll never get revealed just to keep some cohesion to it. And in Placebo Love, I think it is trying to straddle the line a little bit more. And I'm kind of growing and learning myself on how to convey this story almost in this little weak spot where I'm trying to figure out how to make things sort of supernatural and fantastical without being like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if it tied into something that's like mundane? You know, sometimes it's hard for me as a creator and a writer to actually just be fine with thinking, you know what, something can't be explained. I think that makes me a little better at making the mysteries that like are solvable, but not the mysteries that are unsolvable. So I'm still figuring myself out on that one. I'll let you know how it goes.
I really like that too. Yeah, it kind of feels like you're painting part of the world with the negative space. And it definitely feels quite different. And I think it has a sense of realism to it too, because in real life, we never have that exact closure for a lot of things.
Like, I think also there's this aspect of humor and lightheartedness alongside the serious themes of the game. Is there a way that you tried to attack humor? You know, you have like the two observers who are observing the memories of the game. Is there a way that you kind of thought about like making jokes and kind of making lighthearted and then putting those alongside the serious moments? Was that kind of an intentional choice that you went along?
Yeah, I would say it's both intentional and unintentional, because it's kind of I have a love-hate relationship with what I do. I mean, maybe not with what I do, but with drama stuff in general. Like I myself, I'm actually I'm kind of I cringe somewhat with a lot of the pure drama stuff side of things when I think about it. Like you can notice from all my games, even though they're I would say in some way they're like drama, or they're perhaps some of them are like have romance themes into them. But when it's drama, no character ever cries on screen, and when it's romance, nobody ever says "I love you" as a dialogue. And for some reason, I kind of want to do something in that realm without touching that, because I guess the humor is kind of part of my way of breaking up that side of, I don't know what's the word, mushy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, part of like that might be part of what makes it work in terms of saying what I think is more important to be said, because it's kind of, I guess it strays a bit from the convention of drama stories, because that story is kind of it's very narrow in terms of, not very, but somewhat narrow in terms of audience. But I think everyone's just interested in seeing an interesting turn of events. And even though a lot of people shy away from drama stuff in general, actually the human aspect to it is universal with everybody. So in a way, I feel like whenever I make a game, at the start of the game, it always feels like, because you never know where someone's going to be or where someone's going to come from in terms of mental state. They could be coming to play this game after a hard day of at work, and just could be a grumpy day, or they can be any kind of mentality, happy, sad, fun, just bad. So the start of the game, or even just the first half of it even, I think for me, a very important aspect is, perhaps even the main aspect of it, is to kind of go to every direction, every person, every direction where someone might be coming from into the game, and kind of just hold their hand and go to the same spot as everybody else. So that, I think, humor is a big part of it, because people who are into drama and who are into, who are open to it already, they are going to get there regardless. But people who aren't into it, something like humor or just even skepticism from the characters who experience the story themselves in the stories, are going to help being representative to those people with those kind of mindsets going to an experience like that. And it's only then that they can kind of guide everyone to the real starting point of a game in terms of the roller coaster ride in a way, in terms of linear aspect to it. So that's actually what. So as you can actually find out, you can actually see in the games. I think for the most part, the humor in the first part of the game is often more rampant. Or attempts at humor, let's say. But the last half of the game, or perhaps like the when things kind of go into the climax in terms of the pacing and the dramatic storytelling, the humor kind of falls off a bit, goes to the sidelines significantly. Yeah. As with To the Moon, the last hour or so, with Finding Paradise, perhaps around the same time. It doesn't mean that it disappears entirely, but it clearly goes off to the sidelines. And that's because everybody's already there. And then once everyone's there, then we can kind of have the experience kind of actually communicate the core of the experience, and lead it to what I was talking about with that one singular moment of something I wanted to convey right before the credit rolls. It's a particular feeling, and it's a particular concept, and it's a particular, I guess, state of thought. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, it seems like you're drawing people on a journey, on an arc, from like you're starting off trying to gather all the audiences together and get them on board, sort of thing, get them hooked with different kind of humor and drama and all this kind of stuff. And then it seems like you have that innate sense of, okay, over time, certain things need to give away. Certain humor, can kind of, like as you say, go to the sidelines, and then you bring the more, sentimental or more emotionally hitting moments in later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely another aspect to it, where like the contrast between the, you only have light when you have dark, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely helps to convey the full range of motion.
Even your description on your website of Freebird Games says ruining sentimental moments, one badly timed joke after another, which is kind of an ironic thing I said, I think, because it actually I think ironically it probably enhances the moments, quite funnily enough. I'm actually going to move on to Merlandese and ask about Placebo Love and its unique structure and concept. Like this is a scheduling game. You've got relationships. It's like a modern game where you've got emails, text messages to attend to, and calendar things, and it's almost like a life sim of sorts. Just explain your game to me, because I don't actually know how it works.
Yeah, mechanically, right? What the heck is going on? Yeah. This man's crazy. Mechanically, it's actually, I think you summed it up at the very beginning when you had no idea what it was. And you're like, that sounds a little bit like the Persona 4 or something.
Yeah.
That's pretty much exactly the idea. There's no dungeon crawling. There's not really anything in terms of RPG mechanics. The idea is essentially it's you as a main character, you are basically given an allotment of time that is finite. And you have a couple of strict rules on how you can spend your time. So one weekend you're in the city, another weekend you're in the town that you grew up in. And they each have their own cast of characters, and you have 3 sections per day, morning, noon, evening. You'll recognize kind of from Fleuret Blanc. And you can hang out with anyone who's available. They all have different schedules. You can't hang out with the same person twice in one day, but you can hang out with them twice in one weekend. And one of your times must be spent alone, so that, you can kind of relax and recharge.
Yeah.
A little social caterpillar in there. And essentially, like, this is the entire game. You basically have like carte blanche on how you spend your schedule, and how you spend your schedule will dictate which relationship arcs you complete to the end, but also the order that you do them in will kind of affect other people's reactions. Maybe you talk to someone who's like, oh yeah, I visited this bar down the street. And if you went to that bar with someone else, you would be like, oh yeah, I went there with this other person and we talked about this. And so they kind of intertwine in a way. You can kind of cross narrate in different ways. And sometimes that changes a little bit how the relationships grow. It also changes how much more you learn about the mystery, because as a person who is intrigued by the fact that there are 2 soulmates, that's kind of the one thing you can't stop thinking about. And so then you get to choose, like, do you talk to these people about that, or do you hide it from them because it kind of sounds a little sleazy sometimes? You basically just have carte blanche and interacting with these people. But essentially that's it. It's a scheduling simulator, like it says on the tin. It's just like a dating sim like you would normally find, except you're not really dating anyone. You're maybe trying to date 2 people, but like mostly you're really concerned about whether or not this person is even telling you the truth about who they are.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite funny because it's actually quite similar to a project of mine that I was working on. But it's quite, I found it quite sometimes immature, not immature, but it's just quite sameish, the nature of some dating sims where you're surrounded by girls who want to be with you. And you have to choose which one you want to be with. You spend time on them, you spend money on them, and then they'll be yours. And it even reminds me of your tabletop background when it comes to, even all your games, when it comes to board game design and card game design. You have a card game that's selling now, Lore. Everybody go buy Lore right now. You'd use some aspects of board game design in your games, and especially with this one, scheduling and so on. Do you think that kind of affects the way you attack the design?
Yeah, I think unknowingly at first, but now a little more knowingly as I keep making games. There's something I find nice about a game that you can bring to the table and finish, because they have a sort of simplicity in design. Video games usually have like a large system that spreads the entire game, maybe not even a possibility to finish. I love RPGs. I love JRPGs. I love great battle systems and all that. But like when I design them, and even when I play them in indie games, sometimes I want something that's like a little more like simple, but still can be chunky. There's, if you like the battle systems in like Fleuret Blanc or Last Word, some people are for, some people are against it. But you look at them both and like they're kind of simple in their own way, and then they have another mechanic or two that helps stretch it across the game. In the same way, in the scheduling system in Placebo Love, you could just be handed one weekend and just be told, all right, figure out who you want to hang out with and in what order, and then you could be done with the game. But instead that extends across 20 weeks. But at its core, it's just a simple set of decisions that end up going interesting places.
Yeah, and they're quite deterministic as well, I suppose. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of you're just presented with it's like a good life sim game. Like I was thinking of This War of Mine as an example, where you have a day and you have to spend, certain things take certain times and you have to keep everything in order. But it's like a sort of idea that you have all your decisions up front and you just have to decide immedately, do this, do that, do this. That's some kind of like thing that you had in mind where you want all the decisions to be at the forefront of the game, or is it?
Like the decision making should be a little simple when it's handed to you. It's when it's done that I think you should be like, oh, there's lots of different ways that could have went. And it's the same with inside the events themselves. You kind of mentioned before when you read off how Placebo Love is, you actually don't play as the main character. You play as a muse who follows this guy and helps him in his times of indecision, and you inspire his decisions. And one of the things that happens a lot is that, let's say he's having tea with someone, and someone says like, here you go, I made you some chamomile tea. And what'll happen is it says inside of himself, he says, the truth is I hate chamomile tea. And now as a muse, you decide whether or not he tells the truth, whether or not he lies about it, or whether or not he makes up something in the middle. You have like the three options, but you don't actually know what he's going to do. You just know whether or not he's going to tell the truth or lie or something in the middle. And like this decision is pretty simple. It's ABC. It's not the same kind of decisions that you usually have where it's like good or evil, or you get to see the text that the character's going to say and you hope it goes on from that. You're just basically like, all right, well, how well do I know this guy? If I tell him to tell the truth, will at least he be nice about it? Or like, how well did I know the person that he's talking to? Does the person that he's talking to appreciate when he's blunt, or do they like it when they're lied to? And so those are things you kind of realize after the fact. But like, you're basically just handed something simple and told to reflect on it.
True, you get the feedback for your decisions a little later than immediate. You get to see how it kind of tracks along. Yeah, just to kind of cap this deep dive off a little bit. This is questions for both of you. What were the things, and I suppose for Merlandese, what are the things that turned out or are turning out well with your game? And then what, I suppose, are the things that could have improved or can be improved currently, if you're currently working on it, about the design of your game?
It's been a while. You can start.
It's actually kind of a tough question to answer on the spot, but I guess I can. There's so much to say about it too, but I'll just use a specific example from Finding Paradise, and that is so at a certain point of the game, there's a series of playable mini games, right? So it's after and those playable mini games, you can win or you can lose, and it's at a point of the story too where I think people are in a hurry. They kind of want to find out what happens next because the pace just picked up, and those mini games right now, I think what ended up being is that you can retry the battles. I forgot if indefinitely, but you can definitely retry it many times at least. but what I would have done, what I should have done, I think, if I were to do it again, is to make it unretriable, because that wasn't because you can continue either way. You can win or you can lose, and it doesn't there's a difference to the particular thing that happens afterwards. But I think because of the momentum of like how people feel like the game should be, when they lose, even though they know that they can still continue, people often tend to try again and until they win. And sometimes that experience can kind of turn what's important in front of them, to kind of turn that upside down, and it kind of damages the pace of the experience. Yeah, and not even just the repetition, but just the state of mind, because they're conflicted between trying to perfect something that they're trained to do through other games versus what they actually want, which is to see the story go in a way, So I feel like actually having that experience after having that, like forcing that to continue after they've had their outcome, would actually enhance the experience, even though it doesn't feel like it. If maybe when we think about it, just think about it. But in the moment, if that's the way it is, and people don't question it, I think it would lead to a better overall experience at the end.
And on the other side of the question, what are you very proud of about this game? What do you think went really well? Any particular sequence or aspect of the game?
For Finding Paradise, I would think, I guess it's similar to the Moon. It's whereas it to a different degree, I think I was really happy that for the most part, Finding Paradise was there was a message that was conveyed decently to that most people were able to get something out of, to find some enjoyment and hopefully find some truth and find it to be cathartic. But that is that is actually kind of the cherry on top. Whereas, because the really like the very core of it, the inner core of it, was made for a very specific group of people, with people who have shared a certain kind of experience with some aspects of the game's story, and so I think I hope those who have that, who come from that background and who experience this story, I think it represented something in a particular way that isn't brought up much, or isn't represented as kind of as objectively or just without prejudice in a way that as most of the time the topics dealt with in media. So that's I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I suppose so. What you're saying is backgrounds of certain characters and themes brought up. Well, you're saying hopefully you're proud of the way that you've heard that it resonated with certain people who've gone through the same thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because it always feels like you're always trying to do more than one thing in a game, in a project, and it kind of sometimes feels like a puzzle trying to make multiple things work at the same time. So yeah, that's something I'm grateful that it seemed to be okay.
It's definitely resonant for me when I played your games, especially as it comes up towards the ending. Trying to fight back tears and all that kind of stuff, like a very emotional, very resonant games. I'll say from my experience, there were certainly themes that resonated with me on an emotional level, and if that's the aim of what you like in your games, it certainly achieved in my playthroughs. It was very emotionally resonant for me.
Thank you, appreciate that.
How about you, Merlandese? Because you're currently working on this game, what is going well with your game? What are the successes, I suppose, and what is the maybe the things you might be struggling with?
Great. Some of the successes, soundtrack's great. Working with Fleuret, we're making some wonderful tracks. I think it's different than what I usually do, but also like same. And then it has his flavor and his songs. I think it's excellent. If nothing else, I'll be proud to just like have this soundtrack out because it's just like a really nice sampling of music. I think it's great. And also I think the writing, I mean, most of the game, the backbone of the game is based on writing. I think love it or hate it, like plot wise or character wise, I think that it's quality. I know that sounds a little egotistical, but like I think that it's doing well as written material. It's like what's going well with this video game you're making. The words, yeah. I guess that's how I feel about it. It's doing pretty well. Difficulties, I think I was kind of talking to Kan about this loosely like 2 or 3 months ago. The thing is, I think the biggest issue I'm having is I want to have sort of adaptive endings. The endings, like I understand how the game as a plot works and how it could end. The thing is the balance between whether or not I just have the ending, as in like once you beat the game, you've earned all the information to all of your questions, or whether or not the ending actually is determined by what sort of effort you actually put into it. So the game has a lot of different choices, and why not reward the fact that you did certain choices? But I felt like in some playthroughs that I've kind of tested, people are like, oh yeah, I got the ending, but it didn't answer all the questions I had, and that's kind of unsatisfying. And it's like, well, I don't want people to be unsatisfied, But at the same time, if I just give everything at the end of the game, then it's just kind of feels like, why were you making all these decisions if everything was going to end up the same? So I'm just trying to figure out the balance between that right now.
It sounds like a very interesting prospect of, customizing endings according to how they've played and not giving them all the information, but trying to find a way to provide a satisfying ending without, I suppose, giving everyone the same experience.
Yeah, exactly.
We're about to end the show now, but first I'd like to give each of our guests thank you for being on here. You create awesome games. I'm just so privileged to have you on here, Kan and Merlandese. It's just been really, really such a wonderful conversation to have with
Thank you for having us here, Benny. I really enjoyed it. I was kind of nervous at first, to be honest. It's been a while since I've done something similar to this. But yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you guys about this.
Super nice being here, man. Thanks for having us. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good. If you'd like to plug or promote anything you'd like here, Kan, do you have anything you'd like to promote?
I'd like to promote Fleuret Blanc. It had one of the most interesting atmosphere. It was, I guess it's kind of like, to me, it was still one of the projects that really encompassed like all aspects of the kind of projects Merlin makes. And it had such an intriguing and mysterious atmosphere from beginning to end. It's like this kind of uncanny world that was familiar and strange and had its own rules at the same time. And actually, it still had one of the favorite music that Merlin made. I think I made a cover for it at some point, but I'm going to make them.
I've been trying to find that file. You sent me a file.
I'll make
the theme of Fleuret Blanc on piano once. It was beautiful.
Because the song was beautiful. I mean, not to like, but I'll. Well, what did Keanu Reeves say? But anyway, I'll make another one of these days and I'll post it. Yeah, that's great. And also, I guess another plug would be Super Cheeky Laura Shigehara's Raccoon, because that was for a lot of people who enjoyed the kind of games I made. I think that game hits quite a lot of similar territory, and she did a wonderful job with it, beginning to finish, especially the end. So I really recommend people who haven't tried it to give it a try.
Great game. Give us a self plug too. Don't be so generous.
If you don't, I will. It's up to you.
I mean, self plug. Are you talking about Imposter Factory? I mean, there's
yeah. Go ahead. That's what I was going to.
Okay. All right. I mean, Imposter Factory. There's murder. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of bodies, and then there's drama because of all the murder. I guess it's got everything.
And apparently Pasta Factory is going to be released end of 2020, but technically that might be 2021. I don't know if that's still a release date that's valid, but who knows. Merlandese, yeah, go ahead and plug your stuff.
Well, Cam did most of my work for me. I don't even know what to do now. Imposter Factory, definitely. What can I plug? Well, I definitely want to reiterate a plug for Baroque Decay's Yuppie Psycho. They're underdogging it on sales, and I think they should really, really get some much love. As for self-promotion, you mentioned it a couple times, Benny. I made a card game. It's called The Lure. Miles Monroe, an amazing artist, they did the art for me, a bunch of different animals. Game designed to be small, cheap, easy to set up, good to look at, fun to play, and especially good for like families. I like to think that I could get like my grandmother and my mother to play without worrying that like it's too heavy, like they might if it was with orcs or something on it. It's a very adaptive and acceptable game. Great for Christmas, great for quarantine. I think you guys should check it out and like it. That's my plug, man. I just plugged it heavy.
Yeah, no, go buy Lure right now. Go buy it.
I was going to say, I can vouch for Lure as well. I remember playing with the with Merlin and Maxis and Mooney back then, actually. And that was like 3 years ago. Back when it was still testing out, and it's only gotten better since then.
Yeah, your rival naturalist aspiring to gain official recognition from the Queen by luring the best animals from her royal gardens. 2 to 5 players, 15 to 30 minutes play. Just go buy this game. I bought this game actually for a late Christmas present for one of my friends because it's going to arrive late because this year shipping's gone out the window. But I just looked at it. I knew it was by Merlandese, and I was like, yeah, I don't need to know more. I'm buying this game. I trust the author that much. That's the end of our podcast, but I have one last question to ask of our guests. If you have one thing to say to our listeners, what would it be?
Oh, that was a sneak up question. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing. Watermelon.
Oh man, he took my answer, I think. This is from someone else, but listen, viewers, if you are what you eat, you are what you eat eats. Remember that.
Wise words. And that is the end of our podcast, RPG Maker Cola. I will plug RPG Maker Cola by saying listen to all our other episodes. We've got a bunch of episodes online from awesome developers like this, like Kan and Merlandese. So privileged to have them on board. Thank you to both of you, and this was fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And to the listeners at home, I'll say thank you for listening very much to RPG Maker Cola. Keep calm, keep cool, and keep cola. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, guys.